Good morning. I'm an optimist. Really, I am. But honestly, nowadays, it's not that easy to be an optimist. There are so many worrying developments going on. And reading newspapers or opening the browser is not fun at all anymore. So you read something like this. So there is populism on the rise, leading to racism. We have companies cheating, companies being greedy, companies not taking their social responsibility really seriously. We have environmental issues like plastic waste, climate change. And I could continue like this for hours. So obviously, the governments, states, multinational organizations are not able to handle these issues. And obviously, private sector, the market powers, are not able to handle these issues and to develop solutions. I guess you already assumed I'm not leaving you with this depressing perspective. So let me ask you something. Who of you is working for a non-profit organization, and or who of you is a volunteer with a non-profit organization? Please raise your hands. Okay, so that's almost half of it. So look around. I mean, there are so many of you working to make this world a better place. And maybe I pause for a second and just say thank you. Thank you for doing that. That's amazing, that's awesome. And that gives me hope. And let me say you one thing, and here are a few numbers. You are not alone. Worldwide, there are more than 10 million non-profit organizations. So that's huge. There are, and now I'm focusing on Germany, just alone in Germany, 600,000 non-profit organizations. Just alone in Germany, 30 million people are working as volunteers. And one other number, so the annual budget of the non-profit sector in Germany is more than 100 billion euros. So that's amazing. Usually this power, all the work they are doing is invisible. It's just there, but it's making our society. Sometimes it becomes very visible. Just remember 2015, when we had the situation in Germany, roughly 1 million refugees came to Germany, and the state collapsed. So it was the civil society stepping in and really taking care of acute care. So that was a very clear signal of the power of the non-profit sector. And there are some specific strengths which are unique to the non-profit sector. What makes the non-profit sector, the so-called civil society or third sector, so special. So it has enormous normative power, because the ultimate reason to be a non-profit is to have a positive impact in society and on the world. Unfortunately, I have to make one little footnote. There's also the dark side of the civil society. So these idiots not working for an open society, but thinking in populism, etc. But let me assure it's a minority. So back to the positive aspects. So there is a huge and high level on participation. So people from all the different backgrounds are coming together, and they're working together to do something for society. They do something in society. And that's a social glue fostering social cohesion, which is really important. Probably has never been as important as nowadays. Another aspect is innovation. Non-profits, people working in non-profits, they are very close to social issues. So they realize, they sense that there are things going on, and they develop ideas how to tackle that. So that's a huge source of innovation, and we should leverage that. So this is all on the positive side. And we heard these numbers, so that's amazing. So the question is, why is the non-profit sector not really living up to its full potential? And I would like to go through a few clusters of barriers which we hopefully will overcome to unleash the full potential of civil society. And let me make one little personal remark, because I've been asked frequently, are you criticizing the non-profit sector? No, I'm not. I'm not criticizing the non-profit sector. I have the deepest respect for the non-profit sector, for the people being engaged, for the organizations working in the non-profit sector. They're doing a great job, but I think it's okay. No, I think it's even important that we are also asking ourselves, what can we do to have even more impact. And this is what I want to do now with you in this spirit, to see how can we achieve more impact. And there are basically 3 clusters of barriers. So the worst one is around transparency. Transparency should be normal to the nonprofit sector, but it is not. We have to differentiate different countries, so of course there are also regions of the world where unfortunately there are good reasons for a nonprofit not to be transparent, not to be seen, because we do see unfortunately also shrinking space for civil society in some countries. But in other countries, we should see how big the nonprofit sector is. And for example, in the US, we have quite some basic transformation and information with, for example, GuideStar. In Germany, the nonprofit sector is systemically intransparent. So there are basically no yellow pages or something where you can look up who is out there. So there are 600,000 nonprofits, but you don't know who they are. And that comes with a price, because that means that the wheel is reinvented over and over again, because you don't know what people in Hamburg are doing while you might need the same approach here in Berlin. You're not coming together to collaborate, to work together. And that holds true for collaborations between nonprofits, but it's even more severe when it comes to collaborations across the sectors. So meaning a company with the local community and the nonprofit sector. And the reason for that is intransparency and very often also stereotypes we're having in our heads. Because there are the people from the nonprofit sector thinking about the people in business, oh, they're greedy, these money-focused people. And on the other side, the nonprofit sector is seen as the unprofessional people having goodwill but not bringing something power to the street. So that's not true, but we have to stop that. And once we do that, we can work together and really achieve something together. So that's basically the idea. So we have to bring basic transparency to the nonprofit sector, and we have to start working together so that we can learn from each other and that we can scale good ideas together. The second cluster of issues and barriers is around impact orientation. You might want to say, okay, nonprofit sector and the nonprofits, they want to achieve impact, so their guiding principle in their daily business should be impact. Unfortunately, that's not always the case. And that's due to the fact that sometimes we are not using the right tools, the right approaches, etc. Just to give you an example, so if you are a nonprofit working on the field of youth unemployment, and very often you see that they're reporting about how many trainings they had, how many participants they had. That's nice, but it doesn't say anything about the impact they're achieving. So the relevant questions are, did the participants learn something? Did they change their attitudes? Did they get into a job ultimately? This is something which is important. But that's usually, in many cases, usually it's maybe too much, but that's in many cases not the case. We are too much focused also on nice pictures. Yes, working in the nonprofit sector also comes through emotions, so that's good, but just nice pictures is not enough. And sometimes we also like these nice events, even red carpet events. And I think the question is valid, is this nice event really having impact? And also I do see organizations kind of hiding behind their social purpose. So they're saying, oh, we're doing good, so don't ask what our strategy is. No, I mean, this is not something which is conflicting. I think the best way is to achieve impact by being very strategic. So let's put the needs of the beneficiaries into the center. And then we do backwards engineering to come up with the right strategy. And now there is a message to all the donors and funders. Do your funding in a strategic and impactful and sustainable way. Just to give you a few examples. So in many heads, they still have this strange indicator that a good nonprofit is a nonprofit having low overhead costs. That's ridiculous. I mean, an organization needs a professional organization that comes with overhead costs. So a funder should really support an organization in a strategic way by also providing funds for infrastructure, learning, evaluation, etc. And also, a funder should be a long-term funder. Impact usually cannot be achieved within 2 or 3 years. You have impact in society maybe after 5 years or 10 years. So please be patient and stay as a funder with an organization. So this is something where there's a huge responsibility on the side of the donors. And likewise, we can ask the nonprofits to be impact focused. And that is not a burden, it is really something which helps your own mission, meaning you can learn while you're looking at your impact, and you can prove what you're doing. So the third cluster is around self-confidence. Sometimes, and it really physically hurts me when I see this attitude, sometimes I see nonprofits literally creeping and saying, please, can you support me? Well, that's not the right attitude. I mean, the state needs us, the private sector needs us, society needs us, the world needs us. So I think we should be proud of what we're doing, and we should stand up and say, okay, we need your support. And that should be on eye level. So this is something where we really have to work on. And what we also should do is that we have to work together also in the way that we have consolidated messages. Just to give you an example, so the private sector is diverse in itself, no question, but nevertheless, if Chancellor Merkel wants to talk to the private sector, there are a few associations and big organizations she can call up and she can talk to the private sector. Now imagine Chancellor Merkel is sitting in her room saying, I want to talk to the civil society. And she's staring at her phone, but actually she doesn't have any clue whom to call. And that's a shame, and it's also weakening our positioning. So the nonprofit sector should also start working together, not only on an operation level, but also setting the agenda jointly. Because then we are also at the highest level of attendance in the society and when it comes to decision makers. One other example where it becomes quite obvious. So the other sectors, they have their annual gatherings. They have their meetings where they do celebrate themselves, but they also where they're sending their agendas. So like Davos, the World Economic Forum. We also have the same with the states. So they come together when the G7 summits are, G20, etc. And the nice thing is the nonprofit sector is even invited, but they are guests, and honestly, they're not really honestly participating. So why? Why don't we have also the same? Why isn't there something like the Global Civil Society Summit? So where all the big shots are coming together. And there are huge organizations out there. They have massive power, but they are not aligning their power. So why don't they come together? They are setting the agenda. They are defining what we need to develop the world, to make this place a better place. And then we invite the other ones and invite them to join forces with us, to work together with us. Exactly in the manner which I have described. So transparent, collectively, impact-focused, vocal. I think this is something we can do. And if we do so, and I'm quite ambitious about that, if we do so, my guess is that the news in the future will be different ones. So we might read something like this in the newspapers, so that we have set an agenda for women empowerment, and that we're executing this. Or we might see something like this, so that we join forces between the private sector and the nonprofit sector. So the innovative, the normative power of the nonprofit sector combined with the way how to do venture capital, how to set up a fund. So why don't we have something like that? This is something I think which is very close. It's just about us. We have to work together. And if we do so, I think we will enter into the age of civil society. And I think for a good reason, an optimist. Thank you.